Donald Trump lashing out like you have never heard before, while Ted Cruz closing in on the frontrunner's long-running lead. A new national poll taken after CNN's GOP debate. Here's what it shows. Cruz is just 4 points behind Trump within the margin of error. That's an 8-point jump for Cruz in just the last month. Today in Tennessee, the Texas senator welcomed the possibility of a two-man race.
I did think it was interesting that Donald Trump said a couple of days ago that he thinks this race will come down to him and me. I think Donald may well be right. I think it could easily end up being a two-man race but between Donald Trump and me. And I think that presents a good choice to the American people. This process is a job interview.
At a rally today, Cruz aimed his jabs not at his GOP rivals, but his Democratic ones.
We can't forget about 30 seconds. So now the Democratic field consists of a wild-eyed socialist with ideas that are dangerous for America and the world, and 30 seconds.
Our senior Washington correspondent is that gentleman right there in, I don't know if it's fuchsia or purple, I'm figuring that tie, Jeff Zelny. He joins me now. So, Jeff, was it because he got, 18 million people to watch him at our debate? What is behind this? Is it his debate performance?
Hey, Don, I think that's a big part of it. A big audience was tuning in for what was largely a good night for Ted Cruz. But really what's behind these numbers is he's consolidating a lot of conservative support. You've seen Ben Carson slip over the last month or 6 weeks or so. Ted Cruz is getting all of that support. Marco Rubio has slipped a little bit as well. So the decision by Ted Cruz to go hard after Marco Rubio on immigration, we heard him mention it on stage last week in Las Vegas. You were there, I was there. He said amnesty. It takes Marco Rubio a while to explain his immigration position. He supports overall comprehensive immigration reform. Ted Cruz says he does not, although there are some nuances. But Ted Cruz says Marco Rubio is for amnesty. Conservatives hate that. That is one of the reasons he's rising here. He's also done a lot of groundwork. He's been campaigning sort of under the radar for most of the year here. A lot of conservatives, a lot of faith activists, and all that is coming into play right now at the end of the year.
Yeah, at the debate, when he was explaining immigration, it was a very touchy moment between him and Cruz on stage. So here's the thing. Let's talk about Trump now and Clinton, because that tension, Jeff, is really getting worse. I want you to listen how Trump lashed out against her when he was in Michigan last night. Here it is.
Everything that's been involved in Hillary has been losses. You take a look. Even a race to Obama. She was going to beat Obama. I don't know who'd be worse. I don't know. How does it get worse? But she was going to beat, she was favored to win, and she got schlonged. She lost.
What's been the reaction to that, Jeff?
I think it's the first time we can safely say that that word has been used as a verb on the campaign trail, at least this year. But look, the reaction is his supporters loved it. In the room, anything that he says negative about Hillary Clinton, his supporters love. Now, of course, Democrats and perhaps other women voters out there, maybe independents, don't love it quite as much. Hillary Clinton is campaigning in Iowa this afternoon. I'm told by her aide she is not going to mention it, but that's not saying her campaign is being silent about it. Let's take a look at this from her communications director, Jennifer Palmieri. She sent out a tweet this morning, sort of offering some guidance to supporters. She said, "We are not responding to Trump, but everyone who understands the humiliation this degrading language inflicts on all women should. Hashtag I'm with her." So they're definitely trying to, sort of rally the base, rally their own supporters. But Don, I have to tell you, it is probably good for both of their respective bases. Whenever Trump takes on Clinton, his people love it. Whenever she sort of responds, her people love it. But we'll keep an ear out this afternoon to see if she responds to him directly. I don't think she will.
Yeah, but this is, this is his ballpark, this sort of thing. So we'll see. We'll see. Jeff Zelny, thank you. Appreciate it, sir.
Don.
Donald Trump didn't just get vulgar. His talk literally went to the toilet when talking about Clinton in Michigan today. This is what he said about Clinton's late entrance to the stage during the last Democratic debate. She had gone to the bathroom, by the way.
I know where she went. It's disgusting. I don't want to talk about it. No, it's too disgusting. Don't say it. It's disgusting. Let's not do it. We want to be very, very straight up, okay? But I thought wasn't that a weird deal? We're ready to start. They were looking. They gave her every benefit of the doubt because, it's ABC and she practically owns ABC. She really does.
All right, let's talk now to Ryan Williams, who was a spokesman for Mitt Romney and John Sununu when they were governors. Ryan, hello to you. You know, as a Republican Party member, how do you bring in the people in your party who are cheering and supporting Donald Trump, even when he gets, uses this sort of low language, or do you give up on them?
Well, there's no question that Donald Trump's comments are outrageous and offensive, and that the majority of Republicans do not support them. He's consolidating a small sliver of the base that's giving him these numbers and these polls, but by and large, Republicans do not support this. And if we nominate Donald Trump, we're going to lose. As Governor Bush has said before, Donald Trump is a chaos candidate. He is unelectable in a general election. He's only capable of consolidating a small portion of our base.
You were quoted in a Washington Times piece that I'm looking for right here. Here it is, about Hillary and President Obama talked about Trump. You said, it is a calculated effort on the Democrats' part to elevate Trump. They clearly want Trump to be the nominee because they think they can beat him easily. Do you have any proof of that? What makes you say that?
Well, I think what Jeff said earlier in the last segment is true. The confrontation between Trump and Clinton is beneficial for both parties. It helps Hillary Clinton rally her supporters to consolidate and get some attention from some of the liberal supporters that are supporting Sanders. It also allows Trump to rally his base. Any attack by a Democrat helps him, especially the President of the United States. So I think what they're doing is they're elevating him. They know that Trump would be an easy loss in the general election. They would love to see him become the Republican nominee, and anything they can do to help rally his supporters to turn out and vote in the primaries are going to help him.
Ryan, why did you tell The Hill that if it comes down to a Cruz-Trump race, which at this point it looks like it might be that way, that Mitt Romney's going to step in?
Well, I said if it comes down to a race with Trump or Cruz or another candidate, he may step in. Governor Romney cares very deeply about the future of the Republican Party. He's been very critical of Donald Trump. He's been critical of Senator Cruz's efforts to shut down the government. He wants to see an electable conservative win this nomination who can beat Hillary Clinton in November. And I haven't talked to him about it, but I would not be surprised if Governor Romney would step up and do what he can to help the party elect someone who is the most electable conservative who can defeat Hillary Clinton in November.
All right, so you're just saying that you guys haven't talked to each other and he said, hey, I'm going to jump in.
I have not. No, I have not talked to him. But Governor Romney has done a lot to help conservative nominees get elected. He's endorsed in some of the Senate and governor primaries last cycle.
What about the possibility that if Trump becomes the nominee, the GOP tries to get him to select a more establishment sort of candidate for his nominee for vice president? Who is that? How does that look to you?
Well, I don't think Donald Trump's going to be our nominee. I don't think we're ever going to get to that juncture. But I do think that what Donald Trump has said over the course of this campaign is destructive and would hurt him if he did get the nomination. But I do not see that scenario ever happening. I think our party is going to come together and get behind the most electable conservative who can win in November. And I think we've got a lot of great candidates. Governor Bush is a great candidate, and I think he'd be a good person to lead the party in November.
So even if he starts winning these caucuses and the primary states, still you think, no Donald Trump? I mean, the polls aren't showing that, Ryan.
I have faith that our voters are going to come together and elect the best person in November. And I think that once the field winnows, I think you're going to see a shift in who people are supporting, and you're going to see a consolidation behind a good candidate who can take on Trump and some of the other candidates.